This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogmen, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi everybody, how's everybody doing? It's Marlene with Stories of the Supernatural. Everybody's good. As you can tell, I've got my farm outfit on today. It's been raining a lot out here where we're at. I'm every once in a while, I've almost had a fall because the mud is it's been raining here a lot in North Florida. I mean, I know there's other parts of the country which are in a drought. We're not having that, which I'm very glad. But at the same time, we've got a lot of rain. But anyway, also, I wanted to remind you guys again about the getting on the because even though I silenced this, what did I? Okay. That's my grandson, believe it or not, asking, because he lives in a cottage on my property, asking what's for dinner. That tells me he's really hungry. Okay, because otherwise normally he knows that I'm doing the show at this time. So, but that's the nature of the beast. What can I say? Anyway, get on my Substack newsletter on the list. Besides when I put out the shows, I put out a lot of articles on there. I do announcements. As a matter of fact, I did just announce that my latest books, The Phantoms of the Follies, it is available for pre-order on Amazon, but it will go on for sale on October 4th. Okay, and of course you can either probably find me as on Amazon under my author page of Marlene Pardo Pellicer, or you can go to Miami Ghost Chronicles or MP Pellicer, and I have links there that will take you directly to Amazon if you want to pre-order it. Okay, right now I only have a Kindle edition. A little bit later, I'm going to have the print, but right now, to get the Kindle edition, it's available for pre-order. All right. And again, I want to remind you, because people have asked me about my chicken thing. I moved my chicken thing to TikTok. If you want to find out, I do chicken and farm life stuff on my TikTok channel called Chickenista Lady. Okay. That's where I have all my chicken updates and things and all that neat stuff. And unless something really unusual happens, I'll mention my chickens because, believe me, I work with them every day. But if you really want more updates on that and farm life and all the other things that I got going on here, which is why I'm wearing this, go to Chickenista Lady on TikTok. All right. Now let me get on to the good part. The good part is who we have as a guest today. This is the first time the gentleman is here on Stories of the Supernatural, and his name is Samuel Chong. Okay, Samuel is a certified court interpreter and Chinese translator, instrumental in arranging for the Chinese publication of Michel Desmarquet book, Thiaoouba Prophecy, which has been a bestseller in both China and Taiwan, a rare phenomenon. He's also translated the book 334% Lies, the Revelation of H.M. versus Stool, an autobiography of the High Master of the Chair of a secret society that was started in Germany. Today, he dedicates his efforts in promoting the messages in these books. He graduated from UC Berkeley with a BA in Economics, Universidad Carlos III de Madrid with an MA in Financial Analysis, and he currently resides in Los Angeles, California. Now, I'm going to read a little excerpt of what he describes as far as why he became so interested in the Thiaoouba prophecy. Sometime in 2014, I stumbled upon a book on Amazon titled Abduction to the Ninth Planet, a true report by the author who was physically abducted to another planet. Okay, and of course, his book was written by Michel Desmarquet. Curious about the author's encounters, I immediately borrowed this book from a library to my great satisfaction. It answered almost all the questions I have had since I was young. And this is what we're going to ask Samuel about because I find that super interesting. Help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Samuel?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me here.
On the contrary, it is my pleasure. Okay, so here you, what was this? I mean, I know some people always have these questions, but what happened when you found that book? Was it just a chance thing, or were you looking for that type of book? What happened?
Yes, I was looking for the type of books about ET contactees because I was very curious about what messages the ETs give to us. If they can come to Earth, if they have advanced civilizations and technologies, we can just learn from them and learn from their technologies and ways of living. It's like a shortcut for us just to bypass all the troubles and to get to the highest level we possibly can.
Right. Now, let me ask you because I know there's a gazillion million books out there about UFOs and aliens. What was it about this book that
This
caught your
book,
attention? Go ahead.
yes, this book contains specific verifiable information that I actually verified myself and doing a lot of research and also searching the internet. Unlike other ET books or UFO contactee books, the information contained and the explanation given in the book about the mysteries of the world, make perfect sense to me, resonate in my heart. For example, some people say the pyramid is built by thousands of slaves in Egypt. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. There has to be something else that really built the structure in a very precise manner. And this book gives all the answers. And especially the chapter about who is Christ. I read the Bible and I didn't believe a single word in the Bible until I read this book. It connects all the dots, all the unexplained mysteries in the Bible as well. So to me, this book is an answer to all. Is a perfect book for me to really find out what's really going on and what really happened in the past.
Let me ask you. So obviously, it sounds like Michel. He was what happened with him? He was abducted, or how did he get this information?
I mean, he was abducted to their spaceship. The spaceship of this group of ET is called Thiaoouba, the Thiaoubans, and then he was taken to their planet for 9 days and then came back. So it's his personal experience, what he saw, what he heard, what he observed, what he actually experienced. So this is actually a book of his 9 day experience on that planet.
Okay, so obviously this made a deep impression on him. What did he talk? What did he say about these aliens that took him? How did he describe them? Were they friendly? Were they helpful? Or were they just studying us? Because sometimes everybody always wonders about that.
Yes, for this group of ETs or aliens, they are a very beautiful race of aliens. They're 9 foot tall, 8 or 9 foot tall. They have blonde hair. They're Caucasian looking, like Nordic looking,
Mm-hmm.
and they are hermaphrodites. And they have male and female sexual organs in their body, and also they never age. They're always looking like in their 30s, so they never age at all. They have all these supernatural abilities, and he felt great love being present with this group of aliens. So he didn't have any fear. They were really friendly to him, and they showed him all they could do, like these supernatural abilities, like levitation and materializing objects, and also like healing all the diseases, and also all the knowledge. It's just like what Jesus did in the past. All the miracles was shown to him. They disappeared and also reappeared. Amazing information.
How old was he when he got abducted?
Well, it happened in 1987 in June in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
He was living in a place near Cairns. In the middle of the night, he woke up. He didn't know why, but he wrote a note to his wife saying that I will be gone for 10 days and there's no need to worry about me. And then he walked outside of his house and into his backyard, and he was lifted up to mid-air. And then they entered. He saw this beautiful alien, and they went into a parallel universe. Um, the parallel universe is very interesting because it answered all the questions about the Bermuda Triangle, the disappearing uh, airplanes and also ships.
Mm-hmm.
Inside this parallel universe, he saw people wearing medieval clothes and also people who were like savages who couldn't really communicate with them. They were actually trapped into the parallel universe. They couldn't get out. They didn't know how to get out. And then it was explained to him that this is what really happened to the people, the ships and the planes near the portal or the warp
Okay.
in Bermuda Triangle. They were sucked into this parallel universe. So in this parallel universe, time stops, and people don't feel any pain. They don't feel thirst or hunger. So they just remain there unless they know how to get out. Um, so I find that very interesting because I was
S-
very curious about the Bermuda Triangle before.
Right. So this parallel dimension, it's not like, you know how some people say, well, there's a parallel dimension where there's another Earth. Basically, what you're describing is a place where they're, like you said, they don't feel hunger, they don't feel pain, and but they don't know how to get out unless you know how to get out. So like they're like in a way almost like in a suspended animation kind of thing. It sounds like.
It's more like a suspended sphere floating
Okay.
around in space near Earth. So there's a guy named David Paulides who wrote
Yes.
a series of books called Missing 411,
Yes.
documenting all the hikers, people who went to national parks in the US and who just simply vanished. And then when people found their corpse, they're like far away. They couldn't have possibly walked that far within that short period of time. So I think this parallel universe theory or parallel sphere theory explains those people who just simply vanished. They were sucked into this sphere, and then they remained there, and somehow they kind of were thrown out, and then their bodies were found in faraway places. And David Paulides also documented a few cases in which, when they found a corpse, they found that there were bones. Like people could see the bones. It seems that they were walking to the bones. They didn't feel any pain because a conscious person wouldn't have done that if they felt the pain. So I find that corroborating with the theory that in a parallel universe, parallel sphere,
Mm-hmm.
um, people just don't feel the pain.
Right. I've heard of what Dave Paulides describes where, like you said, people, children even, are found far away. They traveled over terrain that it's like, how could this child, sometimes toddlers, now the only in I've wondered about that myself, like, is it, but then at the same time, he's just, since he's crunched all these numbers, you almost think though that there's some type of intelligence behind it because certain people are the ones that disappear. You see what I'm saying? It's almost like if you would say, well, it's across the board, but he's found that there's certain denominated, like certain um, commonalities among the people when you start looking at them, that it almost makes you think there's some type of intelligence as to who gets pulled in. Maybe there's a way that this portal is, how can I say, programmed to, pull in or something certain people. But yes, I know that, among all the different theories of why are all these people disappearing, that one
I
of
mean,
one of the theories is that there's a portal into another dimension.
yes, I think the portal is the key. He has a map showing all the clusters of where people who just
Mm-hmm.
simply vanish and who got missing. And I think those are the places where the parallel universe sphere floats around. So they are not just in one location, they're in several locations, and the Bermuda Triangle is one of the most well-known one. And they just don't remain in that specific location, they float around. So that's
Okay.
why sometimes some people get sucked into it, some people don't. And I think It can explain some of his missing 411 cases, and I think this is a plausible theory to look into.
Sure. Sure. I mean, there's a lot. I've heard everything. I've heard Bigfoot gets them. People living in the woods get them. But and I understand because it gets crazy. But it's true when you look at the cases, because he accounts for people that could have been killed by animals. He discounts people that go in there for suicide. He takes all of those out. And when you look at the numbers, it's abnormally high as to what happened to these people, especially people that were there a minute ago, and then they go around the curve and then that's it, they're gone. And I
Yes,
and I know people say don't be the last in line because a lot of times when you're out of sight of your group is when you're gone.
yes. And I was thinking if we have the technology of really like having a satellite to really see where the anomalies are using electromagnetic devices and
Mm-hmm.
sensors to see where the concentrations of the electromagnetic anomalies occur, we are going to be able to find the exact locations of these warps or portals. And I think that's a good start point. I
Let me ask
also,
you something. Do these ETs, in other words, they use this portal back and forth. Are they responsible for people going over, or it's just being at the wrong place at the wrong time for somebody that
they're
gets pulled in there?
they're not responsible for it because this is just a natural phenomenon,
Okay.
and they use this parallel universe as a transitional station, just that
Mm-hmm.
other people on Earth wouldn't see them. So they were like a hiding place from other people on Earth.
Okay. So in other words, they really don't. They're not there. They're not the ones that are like pulling people into. And I have heard of what you describe. Those type of ETs. I have heard of them that they're considered one of the species. Let me ask you: in the information that this gentleman was given, did they say if there's other types of ETs around?
Yes, they say they didn't just say that, they showed the author Michel
Okay.
Desmarquet about 200 different kinds of ETs.
Okay.
They showed him the bodies of those ETs floating in a very beautiful golden doko. A doko is like a half egg shaped structure that people can see from inside to the outside, but not from outside to the inside. So he
Okay.
saw about 200 different bodies of ETs floating, and some of the ETs look like us. Some of them don't look like us at all, and there are all kind of very interesting species of ETs, and there are like many different species of ETs in our galaxy, and I would say
Okay.
there are at least 600 of them or so.
Okay. Did they tell him what is their, why are they here, or what is the attraction to us?
Well, they are here. They have been here in the past, and they are
Okay.
here just to give another warning to us, as they did in our past. So they were like guardians or mentors to us, constantly observing us and also giving
Okay.
us directions on where we should go in our lives. And according to them, there are 9 different categories of planets in the universe. We on Earth are
Okay.
living on category 1 planet, and they live on category 9 planet, the highest level. So they're like professors, they're like elementary school students.
Right. Okay. Let me ask you: is there any truth? Because you also hear the theory that one of the attractions that they have towards humanity is for genetic material. In other words, that they might have a problem, with their own genetic material, either to become depleted and we have better genetic material. Did they ever tell him something along those lines?
This information is not revealed, and
Okay.
they actually ask us to do our own homework at
Okay.
finding out whether this information is true or not. So they did reveal some information about the grace, saying that not in the book, but telepathically to the author after he came back. So Michel Desmarquet revealed in a public lecture saying there are grays that inserted devices or implants to us, but
Mm-hmm.
not as many as some people claimed. Only about 150 people or so by the year 1995. They did this because they wanted to observe us, um, because they were losing their immune system. We had also been losing our immune system since
Yes.
1948. So they wanted to see how we respond to the same situation. They,
Mm-hmm.
the greys are a dying species, but they also are a Category 1 planet. They also um, come from a Category 1 planet. So they're just like us, coming from sorrow, a planet of sorrows. So they really are just observing us, and they don't intend to cause any harm, and they have not caused
Okay.
any harm. And if they do want to cause any harm, this group of ETs, the Theobans, would have prevented them. But they
Okay.
say there's no danger, absolutely no danger at all.
Okay. So when he got abducted, did he, after that initial abduction for Michelle, did they come back and ever visit or take him again?
No, after the 9 days spent on their planet, he was sent back and he was told to write a book, which is this book, the Theoba Prophecy. Michel Desmarquet wanted to go back because Thiaoouba was just like a paradise to him. After being shown a paradise and after being told you don't belong here, you have to write a book, you can imagine how he felt.
Mm-hmm.
And he never went back until he passed away.
And I know you mentioned it, but when you said about the pyramid, what explanation did they give him as far as what that they helped, or how was it?
The pyramid is a tool. For example, the Great Pyramid of Egypt was actually built by a learned person from Atlantis named
Okay.
Thoth, or Thoth,
Mm-hmm.
Thoth. And he built the Great Pyramid in 9 years using anti-gravitational technologies and also supersonic vibrational system to cut the big stones in a precise manner. So once the pyramid is built, it could it can actually accumulate cosmic energy. So it's like an energy tube, so that the pharaohs actually used the Great Pyramid to
Mm-hmm.
communicate with the people from other planets.
Okay.
They also used the Great Pyramid to make rain because, with the help of different metal alloys, energy can be concentrated in a way that clouds can form in the sky and
Okay.
rain would fall.
Okay. So in a way, they were able to do weather manipulation for rainfall,
Yes,
which of course in that area, the Nile, yeah, if it's not for the Nile being there, for there's nothing out there. Was
yes.
Toth, was he human or was he extraterrestrial?
He was human. He was Atlantis, from
Oh,
Atlantis.
Atlantean. Okay.
Yeah, Atlantis, yes.
I can go ahead from there, and he believes, or that the Atlantis, and that they were some that were able to escape from
Yes,
Atlantis that made it to different parts of the world, and that's why we see pyramids and some structures between these civilizations that, even though supposedly they had no contact, they're very similar in some of their, whether it's the mathematics or the structures, or again, like you said, how did they build this? How were they able to build? Like, for example, in South America and Peru and Bolivia, that the Incas and Mayas, not only would they do the pyramids and these things, but they were doing up the mountains where the air is very thin, that even without exertion, people pass out because, and they even have to chew the coca leaves to help them. And you're thinking, how did they take these quarry stones, take them up these mountains to build these huge temples and palaces or whatever? I mean, that's a big question mark when you think about it. Because I think
yes.
that even now, if they told a modern engineer do that, they'd be like, oh, it'd be
Yes.
like quite a
And
job.
this book actually gives the explanation,
Yes.
which is that about 14,500 years ago. So this book is very interesting. It's very specific and precise to the year.
Uh huh.
14,500 years ago, a continent uh, existed in the Pacific Ocean called Lemuria.
Yes.
So people on the continent actually had advanced knowledge of building the Great Pyramid and also using some of their technologies to build stone structures or statues. Some of them remained on the Easter Island of Chile, like
Yes.
in the middle of the ocean. So I
Yes.
actually visited there and I saw the moas, and they
Mm-hmm.
were just amazing. And they did that to commemorate this group of ETs. They actually made a stylized version of how they looked in the past.
Okay.
Um, but before they were going to transport the stone statues on the Easter Island to the capital of Lemuria,
Okay.
an earthquake struck. And because of the gaseous spells beneath the continent, volcanic activities occurred, and the entire continent basically sunk into the ocean
Okay.
instantaneously overnight. So that's why a lot of the technologies and also the great civilization got lost. It's really unfortunate, but the author actually Michel Desmarquet was taken into that event into
Okay.
the past and actually saw and experienced what it was like when the continent sunk into the ocean. He had a very detailed description on what occurred, how the king was having a meeting with his council members regarding the possibility of a major earthquake occurring, when suddenly the earthquake occurred and people were scared and running all around. Very detailed description and very interesting details. And some of the descriptions also implied that the people from Lemuria actually colonized parts of where the people in Peru were living
Mm-hmm.
in Bolivia and also in Atlantis as well. So that's why you're able to see some of the ancient architecture, archaeological sites in which some of the stones were built in a way that even modern technologies cannot build them.
Right. So
So
let me ask you, are you saying that Lemuria predates Atlantis? Is that what he said?
that's right. Lemuria predates Atlantis, and actually, the people on Atlantis were colonized by the people in Lemuria.
Okay. Right. Right, because I've heard that the destruction of Atlantis came about because their technology got away from them. In other words, they got in over their heads with their technology, and basically it destroyed their land. And of course, you had like the ones that could get away got away, but the majority, like you said, it sank into, and the majority, the technology, the majority of it was lost, and the majority of the people were lost.
Yes.
And I had heard of Lemuria, and that
Mm.
makes sense that because of course now you know that they're finding that all these ancient civilizations and all these different artifacts are in reality much older than was originally estimated. That's starting to
Exactly.
come up now where they're saying no, we made a mistake. This even the Sphinx, they say that it's much older than it was originally, said that it was. And I think that's happened with a lot of things in the ancient world where they saying, "Oh, this is the earliest," and apparently there's an earlier version.
And this book gives the years. For example, the Great Pyramid of Egypt was built 17,000 years ago. So,
Okay.
and the people who landed on the continent of Lemuria came about 300,000 years ago.
And
So
what
in
are
the
they?
very
What are their
beginning,
origins? Are they Earthlings, or were they brought?
they were not Earthlings in the very beginning. They were from the planet called Arimo X3. So they
Mm-hmm.
look like Polynesians on
Okay.
Earth. So on their planet, because of overpopulation, they were thinking about moving some of their population to Earth. So they
Okay.
did some kind of exploration, reconnaissance, and also they first found Mars. So
Okay.
at that time, 300,000 years ago, there was life on Mars.
Okay.
Um, but then because Mars was cooling down, the core of Mars was cooling down, so that it was going to lose its atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew that Mars was dying down. So they went further and found Earth. So they first landed on Lemuria, the continent, where only like a few groups of people from China were living there. And they
Okay.
had a war, they had a fight. The
Okay.
Chinese people were very suspicious. They're still very suspicious.
So in
I
other
can,
words, they're saying that there was already humans, as in Earth humans, already on the planet.
yes,
Okay. Okay. I
it,
understand
it,
now.
it talks about the history of Earth, where the
Okay.
black people came from, where the yellow people came from. And
Okay.
actually, the black people and the yellow people came about 1.35 million years ago for another
Okay.
planet.
Okay.
Um, so black people came and then landed in Australia, and the yellow
Mm-hmm.
people came and landed in Myanmar.
Okay. Because they're
Uh,
finding now that a lot of these early humans that they thought didn't breed, interbreed, they did, like
yeah,
Neanderthals and other species that they said no, these existed parallel to modern humans, but they never interbred. Now they're finding, of course, when they do DNA, on people, they're realizing, no, wait, you've got some DNA in you, either Neanderthal or something, depending on the part of the world, that they now realize that there was crossbreeding. So, in other words, some of these species really didn't die out; they just integrated into what was there.
yes, I can tell you one example is that before the black people and yellow people came to Earth, they were living on a different planet called Bakratini. On
Okay.
that planet, they didn't interbreed at all. So the two races were separate. But on
Okay.
Earth, after a certain time, and after the Caucasian people first landed on Atlantis, people interbreed. So you see in North Africa and also in the Middle East. So
Mm-hmm.
those Middle Easterns and North Africans, they were actually the result of interbreeding of Caucasians, the blacks in Africa, and also the Asians from Asia, the yellow people from Asia.
Right.
So yeah, so that's and also from over years there are some physical because of environmental changes that were
Mm-hmm.
adapting to the local environment as well.
Of
So that's
course.
why you
Of
see
course.
different kinds of
Right,
people.
because like all animals, humans, it's adaptability. You adapt to your environment to survive. So, yes, of course, whatever the climate is, except did they ever say anything, because you know that there's the Basque people that live there off the coast of in Spain, where they have a high percentage of Rh negative blood types. They have a language that really they have never been able to pinpoint exactly the origin. Did they say anything about that?
Well, they didn't really specifically mention about the Basque people, the
Mm-hmm.
Basque country, but they did say that there were other races of ETs constantly observing us and also
Okay.
sometimes live with us, among us.
Okay.
Um, and it's very interesting because I see that um, the author in the book actually met another ET from a different planet, in which
Mm-hmm.
they're like a very, very strange looking creature. They say they've been observing us over the last a few thousand years, but
Okay.
they never interfere with our lives.
Okay.
But on the other hand, some other ETs, they live with us for a certain period of time, including the Thiaoubans, and just try to help us and try to guide us. And specifically, I want to mention about the Jewish people, the Hebrews.
Mm-hmm.
They actually came to the earth. They actually came to us about 12,000 years ago by accident. They were actually relocating themselves to another category of planet, category 3 planet, where they came from. But Earth is a category 1 planet. So, but because of some malfunctioning of their spaceship, they had a crash on Earth. So
Okay.
only at last only 3 people survived, and they started the Jewish race, the Hebrews.
Okay.
So this is where they came about. So they came from a higher category of planet, and they actually survived over the years.
Right, exactly. So, because I'm thinking, okay, for any type of being to exist here on Earth, like you said, they have to be carbon based. In other words, they can live here. They, like us, whether they're not exactly like us, they have to be able to live, exist here. So I imagine what you're saying when they have different categories is that when they go exploring, they have, depending on the life form, is where they could settle if they were looking for another planet. So in other words,
Well,
there's other human type of us out there that might not be exactly like us, but that they're enough like us that they could live here.
yes, I mean, the rule is that they have to relocate themselves to the same category of planet where they came from.
Ah, okay, I see. I understand now.
Yes,
In
they
other
cannot
words,
be
you can't colonize up. You can't put yourself up.
right. You cannot live on a category 3 or category 9 planet for a long
Mm-hmm.
time. And the author actually says that he can only survive on category 9 planet for 9 days, but no longer than 9 days,
Which is why they brought him back within the
right
nine
after
days.
this. Yes.
Okay, and that makes sense because let's face it. I mean, when we say life out there, it's life as we know it. There could be other types of life forms that we just don't understand how they exist, but they do. But just because we don't know about it doesn't mean it's not there. Did they ever tell him at what point, if ever, they will actually expose themselves or come out and say, "We're here for sure. We're here." Yeah, and
They have done that in the past, and they're yeah. So they've done it in the past. For example, the stories in the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah.
mm-hmm.
So they destroyed the two cities because the people in the two cities were setting a very bad example for people who were in contact with them. There were
Right,
like cancer cells spreading the disease, so they had to
right,
do something. They couldn't find any single righteous person, so they destroyed
right.
the two cities. So this is one time they exposed themselves. They also helped us secretly in the past. For example,
Okay,
during World War II, they prevented Germany from being the first country to develop the atomic bomb. They helped the
right,
US government to develop the bomb much faster than
right.
Germany.
Because I heard that it was that they were that they were on the verge of developing it. That's what I hear. I mean, without knowing the specifics, that's what I've heard. That they were very close. That they're scientists. I mean, you could say they were Nazis, but they were brilliant. They were very intelligent as far as developing technology. What's the word? Out of the box. Like we're gonna go
Mhm.
beyond what. In other words, maybe science eventually would have gotten there, but at a much slower pace. And they were
Mhm.
willing to, the scientists that were working there. Yes, I've heard of that. And as a matter of fact, that I was reading recently, as a matter of fact, that Sodom and Gomorrah, that they have found evidence that basically these people were obliterated by like a asteroid fireball kind of thing that basically wiped everything out. That there was no warning. This was not like a catastrophe where you say, okay, in 3 days we better get out of here. This thing came in and just decimated everything in the surrounding area. And now they've actually found proof in the environment of what occurred because a lot of times people were saying, "Oh, Sodom and Gomorrah is that biblical? That really that place didn't exist, but it did exist." And they found evidence of what happened to it or what the basis of the story is. And that's
Yes.
very interesting what you said about them.
So
A lot
that's
of
why
times. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
so that's why the book was so like impressed me so much that I had to go and find the author because everything
Okay.
matches everything that I learned from the past. It provides a lot of evidence, and new evidence is coming to prove the details in the book. So they really did reveal themselves not only for destructing the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, but also
Mm-hmm.
they um, they actually intervened 2,000 years ago by sending Jesus Christ to us.
Okay.
They did.
And was it the message of Christianity? Is that what his purpose was?
To be more precise, is the teachings of Jesus Christ was
Okay.
actually the main purpose of doing so. Not the Bible, because the Bible was actually later distorted by
Right, you have
the.
the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Gospels and everything. I know what you're saying. That as far as the composition, it's like wow, there's a million hands that have gotten into developing and altering it. That part I understand. So, but anyway, keep going with what you were saying about them sending Jesus.
Yeah, so I should go back to Moses, because
Okay,
they actually helped Moses to lead the Hebrews out of Egypt. So you
okay,
see in the Bible, Exodus, it talks about parting of the sea. It was
mm-hmm,
actually done by the ETs, according to this book. They
okay,
parted the sea, which was really shallow at that time, using like a force field.
okay,
Um, and also, they led Moses to their destination only in about 3.5 years or so, not 40 years or so. So
right,
this book corrected a lot of the things in the Old Testament and also the New Testament. And
mm-hmm,
amazingly, the things that it corrected made perfect sense to me,
okay.
resonance in my heart. For
Right,
example, I
right,
mean,
right. I understand what you're saying. That you read it and you're thinking something inside of you saying this is the right thing.
yes, I mean, Moses leading the people for 40 years in the desert, that couldn't have been. I mean, so long, that's just too long to be true.
Right.
3.5 years, that's reasonable. So this is
Yes.
my mindset when reading this book. So after Moses, a few thousand years later, people were expecting like the Messiah come into the world,
Mm-hmm.
but because people were so not into spirituality, the Theobans, this group of ETs, wanted to help by creating this kind of um, uh, very unique event in which people thought that the Messiah was born. So they inserted an embryo into the uterus of Virgin Mary.
Okay.
So baby Jesus was indeed born from the Virgin Mary.
Right.
And
Right.
indeed, King Herod killed a lot of babies afterwards.
Right. Because of
And
the
they,
prophecy that he
yes,
would be
yes.
usurped.
Yes, and then when that was about to happen, they moved Joseph, Mary, and the baby Jesus to another location near Egypt. And then when things quiet down, they came back. Um, because the baby Jesus was born from an embryo. When everyone is born this way, um, the person forgets what happened in his or her past lives. They have to pass what they call the river of oblivion, forgetting all the knowledge, all the ability to perform miracles. So that
Okay.
baby Jesus, even though he was really intelligent, smart, and acute, and very spiritual, he couldn't really perform any miracles. Um, and he traveled to India. So that's why there are some people say that Jesus went to India.
Right. Like
Um,
where did he go for all those years?
Yes, and went to China and died in Japan. So
Right.
that's
I've
why
heard of the Japan. Yes, I've heard of that.
there's a tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan. People can look it
Mm-hmm.
up and find
Yes.
very interesting details about it. So
Exactly. And the first time I read about that, I was like, Japan? That was that. But then I read up on it, and you're absolutely right that there is a version where he went into Asia and ended up
yes,
in Japan.
yes. So that's the Jesus who couldn't perform miracles. Highly spiritual, highly intelligent, and very smart, but couldn't perform miracles. That's why you don't see any records of Jesus performing miracles before the age of 30, before he
Right.
started preaching. So, the one who could perform miracles and who preached love and all the messages was
Mm-hmm.
actually one of the ETs from Thiaoouba. They made a
Okay.
body of Jesus that looked like the one who went to Japan, and then um, inserted themselves into that body of Jesus,
Okay.
and then took on that body and began preaching. The reason they had to do this was to show that this Jesus Christ could perform miracles, because at that time people didn't believe
Sure.
anything unless they saw that this was someone able to perform miracles, the Son of God, the Son of Jehovah, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's why they had to impress people at that time to make them believe all the teachings of Jesus Christ.
Let me ask you, which was I was curious when they implanted the baby into Mary. He was human. It was a human embryo,
It
or
was a human
totally
embryo,
human.
totally human.
No ET. In other words, it wasn't a hybrid. It was totally human.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you, and then they might not have explained it for all I know, but why? Why not let her, let's say, marry Joseph and say, you know what? When she gets pregnant, we'll guide that child. Was it because they had done something a certain way to that specific embryo? Do you see what I'm going with this? Like, why impregnate her versus waiting for her to have a child with her husband?
Um,
And you see where I'm going
because
with this? Like,
yes,
why?
because people were waiting for the Messiah to be born
Right? Yes.
from a
Yes.
virgin woman. So they had to
Ah, the
fulfill the
prophecy.
prophecy.
Okay, I
Yeah, the
understand now.
prophecies. See,
Okay. Okay.
so that's the reason.
Right. And I know from what I understand that they were really expecting the Messiah to be a warrior versus a peacemaker, or in other words, to preach that that's not what they wanted, because of course the Jews were under the dominion of the Romans and they were looking for liberation. They wanted to get the Romans out of there. So they were thinking the Messiah was going to be a liberator, a warrior, because of course that's the only way they saw that they were going to. And of course it sounds the plan was different, in other words, the ideals. But of course I understand when you're living under those circumstances, that's what the people wanted to hear. The Messiah is going to. But then of course the message resonated, from what I understand, with the common people. You understand what I'm saying? And that's why it
Yes.
became so popular. And of course the Christianity evolved from there. Was
Yes.
that their purpose when they went ahead and said, okay, we need to keep going and present Jesus, like you said, with the ability to do the miracle. In other words, to be witnessed, have doing miracles and all of that. Was the purpose of that to be able to present him as a Messiah, or why?
The purpose was to make people pay attention to this
Okay.
person who could do the things that they couldn't do, and to pay attention to the teachings of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
The main purpose of Jesus Christ coming down is to preach spirituality and love, and
Mm-hmm.
also, more importantly, by showing people that he resurrected 3 days after being put on a cross, that there is life after death and there is
Okay.
reincarnation. But somehow the concept of reincarnation got removed by
Yes,
the
that's what I understand. That right, that the
yes,
reincarnation part, it was like it's a one-way trip. You go
yeah,
into heaven or you're going into a hot place, but that's it. No redos, in other
right.
words. Right, and I was going to ask you because I know you made reference to the reincarnation part, and I understand that there was before in the Bible reference to reincarnation. Okay, as a matter of fact, with John the Baptist, etc. But I understand perhaps why it was removed or by whom or for the reason. How's that? Um, well, obviously, it did they have a hand with any other religious leaders of other types of religions, or was it only with Christianity?
Well, this is a very good question. The only other religion mentioned was Buddhism or the Buddha.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Buddha was born earthling. And then in this book, the highest praise that it gives to earthling was actually the Buddha.
Okay.
And And also there are other political leaders such as Martin Luther King, Gandhi, and those are the other people mentioned.
Right.
So it really doesn't mention about other religions. When it does this, it doesn't mention anything about it. It's asking us to do the homework, to
Right.
see
Well,
what's that.
and when I say religion, what I really mean also is uh how can I say a spiritual path. Do you see what I'm saying? Because
Mm,
even though you mentioned, like you said, Buddha, there's Buddhists, there's people that follow, regardless of their background, that their religious practice, their spiritual practice is Buddhism. Do you understand? So the
mhm.
impact is it's gone beyond all over the world and beyond what happened when Buddha was alive. Same thing with Christ. You see what I'm saying? It's like, okay, did they do this with other figures? Not political, even though they lived in political times, but that their message was mostly on a spiritual and a way to live your life. You see what I'm saying? Um, that's very interesting because, in other words, they were always manipulating, but they kind of did it subtly, like with introducing certain people, certain leaders, or tweaking, let's say, historical events, like what you were saying.
Yes.
Do they? I'm sure you're familiar with the with Star Trek. You know that they have, and I'm going to use Star Trek as an example. That that they had the Prime Directive, which was if they ever went to a planet that was much more primitive, that they would not interfere with the civilization. In other words, let them develop. Did they interfere with us because we needed the help, or because they're hopeful about us? In other words, like they just need a little help, but why did they think that they should help us?
Because it actually relates to the purpose of life. The
Okay.
purpose of life is to grow our spiritual abilities, or it's actually the
Okay.
main focus of life is our spiritual development. So when we deviate from this main purpose, then if we deviate far enough, they're going to lead us to the right direction, one way or another. So
Okay.
when in the ancient past, when certain religious leaders enslaved people mentally and
Mm-hmm.
physically, they sent a dream to, they appeared in the dreams of the religious leader,
Okay.
asking him to mend his ways. When he listened, but his followers, his other followers didn't listen,
Mm-hmm.
they actually led him to a location. The ones listened were saved, and the other who didn't listen were killed or destroyed.
Okay.
So this three who listened learned the lesson and then really changed their ways and then liberated the people who they enslaved before. So they
Okay.
did that in this way. And I think the reason they took Michel Desmarquet to their planet and then came back was actually to send us another warning that it is time to really focus on our spiritual development and not to focus too much on the material
Of
wealth
course.
of a person. So it's
Right.
a very strong warning because, if you remember the Bible and the book of Enoch,
Mm-hmm.
Enoch was really also asked to write a book.
Right.
Remember, a few decades later, his great grandson Noah was asked to build an ark, and you know what happened afterwards.
Right.
So Michel Desmarquet was also asked to write a book.
Okay.
So it seems that right now we are at a very critical moment of our time,
Oh
and we need
yes.
to change our ways.
Yes.
And I really suggest people to read the book and to really know what the messages are.
Right. So in other words, what you're saying is that even though they've helped us technologically, really what they're interested in is our spiritual development.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Because of course, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense as far as now when Michelle, obviously this happened to him when he was an adult. But as when he was growing up, did he ever feel or think that there was something special about him, or something that made him think, or was this his first encounter?
Well, he was really an interesting figure when he was young. He didn't have a lot of education. He only went to high school in
Okay.
France, and then he went to the military in Africa, like the French military in Africa. And he was a very strong-minded person. He didn't follow the orders. He had his own independent thinking and will. So
Okay.
when other people followed the leaders of the military, he didn't. He
Okay.
was the rebellious one.
Mm-hmm.
He was always like that, and he always thought independently. He didn't really give any dignity to the leaders or dignity to the leaders, and though
He must have
he,
gotten in a lot of trouble then.
yeah, he had got into a lot of trouble. Yes.
Yeah.
um, One thing about him was that after he came back, um, after he was told, "You don't belong here. You have to go back and write a book." He wrote a book, and he tried to let as many people know about the book as possible. A lot of people didn't believe him, and he had a major emotional breakdown
Okay.
because even his wife didn't believe him. His wife was thinking that he had an affair with another woman, so
Oh
he,
boy.
so she
That's
actually
where he went for the 9 days. Okay.
yes. So
Yeah.
she actually divorced him.
Oh.
So he had a terrible experience after coming back.
Okay. Okay. Right. And you know what? You hear about that where some people yeah, there's a downside from pursuing what it is, especially when you're saying something that other people will go, "You're lying. That's not true." What, you went to an alien world? Why don't you tell me the truth? You were off with another woman. What is this that you went to another world? Yeah, in other words, I can see why she made me not believe them. But yeah, so, but he persisted. It sounds like he delivered on what they asked him to do.
So he had a major depression, and
Mm-hmm.
he told to some of his close friends, like yelling, saying that you don't know what these people did to me. They destroyed my life. So he was really emotional and
Sure.
really kind of depressed for a long time. And then,
Mm-hmm.
in order to make himself a little bit better, and he moved to Vietnam, a
Okay.
southern island in Vietnam, in which he said that scenery where he found on that island was a little bit similar or had a little bit of resemblance to the planet Thiaoouba, which seemed to
Okay.
him like a heaven, like a paradise.
Okay. So in other words, he was trying to pursue it as close as he could.
Yes, and the two times that I visited him, he was telling me he really didn't want to live here anymore. He didn't. He really wanted them to take him away to the planet again and
Well, you know what?
basically
It almost sounds like, I'm sure you've heard of people that have had near death experiences where they don't want to go back. They're like,
yes,
sometimes they're sent back. Other times they have children and they come back for their children. But if it wasn't because of that, they wouldn't come back. And
yes,
it almost sounds like he had a similar experience. And did he ever
yes.
remarry? What happened with him as far as his family life?
So after he traveled to Vietnam, he met a local lady in Vietnam and married the lady,
Mm-hmm.
and where he lived kind of like a hermit. He didn't go in public anymore unless
Okay.
some tourists happened to meet him by chance.
All right.
That's actually how I found him. Some tourists took pictures of him and where he lived.
Oh.
I didn't know his exact address. I just showed the taxi driver
Wow.
the picture, and then the taxi driver took me there. Yeah,
So he lived the rest of his life in Vietnam then.
in Vietnam. Yes, he died in Vietnam.
Interesting. That is so interesting that people sometimes, oh, you know what? And did you, obviously, I saw pictures of you with him. When was it that he passed away?
He passed away 4 years ago in 2018,
Okay.
just 4 months before I visited him the second time.
Okay. Did he leave any type of manuscripts or anything after his death?
Well, he wrote this book and two other books. The other ones are called Nature's Revenge and
Mm-hmm.
She and I. And he was also in the process of writing another book about himself. He was
Okay.
into maybe like 20 pages or so, but he didn't finish it. When I
Okay.
asked about the manuscript, and his Vietnamese family told me that they threw them away.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Oh my God. I can't believe they did. That's a
right,
shame.
right.
And did he have children? Did he have children with the Vietnamese lady? With his
With the
wife?
Vietnamese lady, no, but with his first wife, yes.
Oh, so he
He,
did have children from his first marriage. Okay.
yeah, he has two children.
Okay. Okay. So I can't believe, you know what? I hate to say it, but I know that sometimes that happens where something is important, but other people, like, they don't get it. It's like, uh,
Right.
let's just throw this out. Um, so what do you, I'm going to ask you, Samuel, have you ever been abducted?
No, I have not. But in my dream, I had one
Uh huh.
dream when I was in elementary school.
Mm hmm.
In the dream, I was so eager to move up to a higher level. I said,
Okay.
why don't I move up to a higher level? What do I do? What do I need to do to move up?
Okay. Okay.
And
So, in
then
other
that's when,
words,
yeah,
you never know when you least expect it because maybe, if you're going to be, carrying on with what the message that he was carrying on with. And sometimes, things sometimes start off through dreams as far as communications.
mhm,
Maybe that's how they start with the preparing you. How's that?
yes,
Because if you think about it, even though you spoke to him and he described it, it's got to be very different if you have that experience. People don't like you described that after that, he was like, I don't want to be here. I want to be over there. And I know I can't be there, but so it's like you said it, and I hate, and it kind of ruined his life in a way because if he would never have been abducted without knowing what would have happened, but it sounds like there was a repercussion from that him being taken over there.
yes. If he hadn't been abducted, he would have lived a normal life, being a
Yes.
landscaper in Australia, like raising cattle and growing foods or plants.
Mm-hmm.
That would be like a that would have been a very normal life for him.
Right, right. Yeah, people would have said, well, you wouldn't have, some people you say, well, what, you get a chance to go to another world, but then they don't never realize the downside. Once you have that knowledge, you can't unknow it. It's there in your mind. So what do you do? You see
You
what I'm
know,
saying?
it's just like me. The reason of me locating him and finding him, taking so
Mm-hmm.
much trouble to meet him, was to find out what else he knew about and didn't write in the book.
And?
Because in the postscript of the book, he
Uh-huh.
says, there are more incredible things that I'm not allowed to write in this book because we are far from understanding them. So that got me. That got me very curious because
Okay.
the
And
things he wrote in the book were already incredible enough. What's more incredible about it?
so what happened when you went to see him? Did he talk to you about something that wasn't included?
Yeah, the first time, I mean, he didn't. He was really annoyed at my visit, and but then, he- but then he thought that I could help him in a certain way because I'm Chinese. He showed me a
Uh-huh.
contract he signed with a Chinese publisher. The
Okay.
publisher paid him $2,000 for the copyright to have the book
Okay.
published in China. But he never heard from them again. He wanted the book to be published in China. He wanted me to follow up. So I was
Okay.
very eager to please him.
Okay.
So I gladly took the mission and to really follow up. It turned out that the Chinese publisher was so afraid of the censorship and the Chinese government,
Oh
they
boy.
decided not
Okay.
to publish it.
Right. I have a copyright to a book that now I'm afraid to publish it because this. Yeah, it
Right.
happens. It
They
happens.
paid
It
two
happens.
thousand dollars already. And then Michel Desmarquet asked me to find another publisher. and to have the book either published in China, in Taiwan, Hong Kong, or even Singapore, just a Chinese-speaking country.
Okay.
Um, After a lot of efforts, through personal connections, through cold callings, I finally was able to find a willing publisher
All
for
right.
his book. And then before it got published, he sent me an email. He said, I don't know how they knew it, but the book was going to be published in China. They were really happy about it. So they allowed me to tell you one thing that I was not allowed to write the book. But you have to come to me in person. I have to tell you in person.
Okay.
And the reason I later found out was that he didn't know how to type. Everything he wrote in the email was typed through his niece.
Okay.
So he didn't know how to use a computer. So
Okay.
in order to keep it confidential, private,
Mm-hmm.
he didn't even want his niece to know about the content. So
I
I had to
understand.
go there in person.
Right. And you know what? And people don't realize that because they think everybody knows how to use a computer or anything. They don't realize that sometimes. So who published it then? The new publisher or the original publisher? Who published it in China?
The new publisher,
The new
it's
publisher.
yeah, it's a very large publisher in China. It's published as a science fiction in China.
Ah, I see how they got around that. Okay. Science fiction. It's like it's
Yes.
fantasy. Okay. That's an interesting. Yes, I like that. I like that. And I see something that what you got it was also published, I think what did you say in Taiwan as
In
well?
Taiwan. It's published in Taiwan as a nonfiction, and it's a complete
Ah,
version of the book.
interesting. There you go.
So
How do
the
you
curious
categorize?
people, the people who have the determination, can really read the Taiwanese version of the book.
Oh, okay. Samuel, so are you going to write a book, Samuel?
In a few months, yes.
I thought so because I'm thinking you probably learned a lot of things verbatim
Yes.
from Michel that it was never in that original. What? Because he published the book when in the 1980s.
The book was written in 1989 and it got
Okay,
published in 1991.
okay, so that's a long time for
Yeah,
things that he talked to you about that were not part of the original manuscript.
right. That's actually a long time after. Yes.
Aha, I see. All right, Samuel, for my podcast listeners, what is your website address? I'm going to put a link in the credits of the show, but what is the link the your where they could find more information about this?
They can find information about the book by typing Thiaoouba Prophecy on Amazon. It's on Amazon.
Mhm.
And my website is chinasona.org,
Okay.
CHINASONA.org slash
Okay.
Thiaoouba with a capital letter T.
Okay, right, Theoba, and you know we they're seeing here, but like I'll put a link in the credits to the show, and I would love for you to come back. Do you haven't? Are you going to be publishing something soon, or you don't know yet?
I actually published like an article. A
Mm-hmm.
book was going to be like a few months after, but a lot of people ask me, what did he really tell you, in which I cannot reveal or he couldn't write in his book. They didn't really, I mean, the people, I mean, he didn't really tell me that I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
write a article and make it out of make it like a puzzle or like a
Okay.
riddle. So that's what I did. I wrote an article
Mm-hmm.
about the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Let me ask Samuel, did he tell you anything that you're saying? This is really interesting, but I cannot talk about this. This is too way out there. Did he ever tell you something along those lines?
About the
That he said something, of course, that wasn't in the book. That when he
Mhm.
told you about it, you're like, "Wow, wait a minute, this is too crazy. If I put this out there, people's heads will explode."
Well, this one thing he told me about, I would say, if I were to reveal it publicly, I think 90% of the people wouldn't believe me.
See,
Um,
that's what I'm talking about.
yeah, even if I tell it, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
like no one's going to believe me, basically. And but he did reveal other things like the Sphinx.
Okay.
He says very similar to Edgar Casey.
Mm-hmm.
that there are three chambers beneath the Sphinx.
Right.
That when time is ready, when they're to be opened, when we are ready, they're to be opened, then everything will be revealed. The
Right.
knowledge and everything happened in the past. And he also talked about the grace, what I just mentioned about the implants. There's absolutely no danger about the implants. They are not
Right.
harmful at all.
Right.
And
I've heard that some
also,
people are weirded out with that, and I understand why though. I understand why people are feel unusual about because how can I say? I guess nobody wants to be monitored like that. You've got something in your body. If to our psyche, that's like, especially when it's done without permission. How's that? Because if somebody tells you, "Hey, I'm going to monitor you for an experiment," and you're okay, it's different. So I could see why
yeah,
that would be a problem for some people.
yeah.
So you don't have you're working on a book, but you don't have a definite publication date.
Right now, I'm trying to, not yet, because I'm trying to see what people are interested in knowing, like
Mm-hmm.
what are the most frequently asked questions, so I can put the responses in the book. So
You know
if you
what,
have any, yeah,
Samuel? I think a lot of people really always wonder: are they friendly, or are they? Will they be friends, or will they be in the eventually enemies? You understand? Because well, like what Stephen Hawking says, where he warned, if you have a civilization that is far superior to us in technology, we're basically at their mercy in the sense of that if they ever became hostile, what could we do about it? So I think that a lot of people wonder about that. Everybody's kind of already, because of Hollywood and movies and science fiction and all this, a lot of people are on board with the existence of extraterrestrials, but they're always wondering, are they going to be friendly or are they not going to be friendly? You see what I'm saying?
I can give you a brief response on that.
Yes, yes.
First is that if they are really hostile, they wouldn't need to wait until
Oh, of
far or
course.
maybe in the future to do anything about to
Right.
attack us or anything like that. So they must be friendly. And the second is that the essence of spiritual development and spirituality is about unconditional love. So when Michel
Mm-hmm.
Desmarquet was present with this was being with this group of aliens, ETs, he felt love from them, a
Okay.
great sensation and comfort, and really there was absolutely no fear at all. And the third is you really need to realize and understand and really need to have independent thinking how this world is run. So when they really want to create a lot of wealth,
Mm-hmm.
such as um, making money from wars, they have to create wars.
Of
They have to
course.
create this kind of imaginary enemy
Mm-hmm.
so that we are easily controlled by the
Sure.
politicians or the
It's
people.
it's distractions. Such a
Yes,
well,
yes.
obviously besides making money, but yeah, it's a common
Yeah.
enemy on the outside instead of being able to pay attention to what's going in within our society, because all of a sudden that's a bigger threat. So yes, absolutely, I agree with you. I agree with you
Yes.
100%. And yeah, I think though that's another thing. I think a lot of people, the majority of people are fed up. They don't want wars. They don't. Nobody wants a war. I don't think nobody wants to lose, their loved ones or anything like that. And I don't think most people nowadays, most modern humans, are ready for that or want that anymore.
Mhm.
Samuel, I would
Yes.
love for you to come back when you've got your book out. I will keep tabs on it, and I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It has been absolutely fascinating to talk to you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Take care, and I will keep tabs to make sure I ask you back when you've got that book ready to go, okay?
Okay, great.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Wow. That is so interesting.
Yes.
And you know why? Because some of what he's talking about, I know there's people going, huh? What? I'm sorry, but I'm one of these people like, you know how they talk about freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of this? It's freedom of ideas. Hello, that's where it starts out. The idea. Okay, whether you agree with it, whether you don't agree with it, whether you think it's far-fetched or whether it resonates with you, like that makes sense. And by the way, it did. This was a recent that I came across about Jesus, that there was a couple of shrines in Japan for Jesus, and I was like, what? Jesus, Japan? How, what? I'm still on the Dan Brown. He went with Mary Magdalene to France somewhere. It's like, what, Asia? Or then of course then you have the I believe it's the Church of Latter Day Saints, where he came to America, and it's like, Asia. Yeah. But again, and it's very interesting to hear a version of, because you know what, we always associate extraterrestrials with technology. It's flying saucers. We've recovered these spacecraft, and we've back engineered, and that's why we've advanced with our technology so rapidly. Blah 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 blah. But very rarely, to be honest with you, do you ever hear a connection between extraterrestrials and spirituality, or that their interest in us is for spirituality. It's always, no, it's like, I want to say, for lack of a better word, it's almost like spirituality, that's like besides the point. It's either about our genetic material, okay, or that we've gained technological advances because we've captured the ship, or, and of course you have the version of, they're, we have some type, no, not we, let me phrase that differently. The governments have some type of agreement where they have an exchange, whether it's humans for technology or whatever, hybridization, you name it. Let's go down the X-Files rabbit hole. So, but never the spirituality. Never the spirituality. In the sense of, and if we go with the ancient aliens kind of theme, where they say that a lot of these ancient civilizations, who they depicted as gods, were in reality extraterrestrials. All right? And when I mean spirituality, in the sense that these gods had temples and priests and cults and you name it. All right? And that in reality, because the civilization at the time were kind of on the primitive, this is the only way they could explain that a person supposedly had these powers. All right? In other words, you couldn't be a regular human, or the concept of an extraterrestrial was more difficult. You had to be a god or a deity of some type. But not true spirituality, as in spirituality. And remember, all these temples, if you look at them, I mean, when you read all these stories about all these, whether it's the Greeks or the Romans or even far back into Babylonia, Egyptian, all these um, all these gods, or whatever, they were always about appeasement. All right. Yeah, you could ask the god or the goddess or whatever if you wanted something material, or if you wanted, let's say, a safe childbirth. But it was always, depending on what scale. Are we talking, hey, bless the make sure the Nile rises so that we have fertile crops. That's on the larger scale. And as far as the individual, it was like, of course, you know, safe childbirth or something like that. But it really didn't address everyday spirituality, as in not the give and take of materials. I want to say maybe till around Christianity, which from what I understand is why Christianity appealed to different people, because of the approach it had versus all these other type of religions. Remember, a lot of these, by the way, a lot of these gods and goddesses and deities and religions or whatever, you didn't appease them just when things went wrong. You always had to like make sure that they were taken care of when, just to keep things good. Which is, by the way, a lot of these priesthoods, this is how they had power. They were very jealous of their power, because that's why they had these huge temples. And of course, the offerings were not only a dead pigeon, if money, food, whatever. And let's face it, even into more modern times, when I say more modern times, not BC, a lot of emperors, rulers, whatever they are, always realized that for them to really be solid, in other words, the last thing you needed was for the priest class to turn against you, because then you were going to be in deep doo doo. So it's a weird kind of dynamic, not really weird, but it's human nature. Um, but anyway, yes, getting back to the original point, you very rarely, no, to be honest with you, I've never heard of the ETs being interested in our spirituality or to develop us spiritually. All right, that's a new one. But in a way, it's almost like you're glad about that. And one thing, and this is my, like I've mentioned it before, this is my version that what if we have new ETs? What if the ones that were around in ancient times hang out and they left? They left. And these are new ones. Because you think, okay, how long are you going to study us? How long are you going to, or try to give us ideas or push us along or whatever? At some point, it's either you either get it or you don't, or okay, you're on your own. Eventually, you'll figure it out, or okay, we're going to have the big reveal. Here we are. You know what? What if these are a whole different set of ETs? That somebody when you go to the counter that you take a number. Maybe somebody's got a counter with the number to go visit Earth, and that it's like, okay, my turn. Get out of here. We're gonna go and mess with the Earthlings. Why not? Or the other one where the ones that are around are stuck here. They came here, something happened, who knows what. They're whatever, however they travel interdimensionally, light years, whatever, doesn't work. It enough so that they can get around the Earth, but never to break away and go where they were going back or to where the new destination. And they've kind of like become a hybrid Earthling, but they're not Earthlings, they're ETs. And they're kind of stuck here. Why not? So many ways this could go. Anyway, guys, I hope you liked the show. I really enjoy speaking to Samuel. All right, it's something different. And believe me, this is basically what we need, exploration of new ideas and theories and whatever it is, because somewhere in there, okay, think about it. There's a lot of ideas that later proved to be true that originally when they were first presented, people were like, huh? Come on. What? The Earth round? No. No, we're the center of the universe. What are you talking about? Hey, that Galileo guy? That kind of deal. So come back. I have a lot of great guests. I have a lot of people lined up. I will be doing the live stream. I don't know by the time I stagger this. If not, I'm doing a Halloween live stream. Let's see what I come up with that. A lot of interesting stuff. And again, don't forget that I have the new book out, Phantoms of the Follies. Phantoms of the Follies on Amazon, MP Pellicer. And some people ask me, what is it about? Is it a ghost? And not really. Not really. What it is it talks about the Ziegfeld Follies, which he did. He started, remember, this was in the time where the jazz era, Prohibition came out. People went wild, okay? People went wild, women cut their hair, flapper style, the hemlines went up. A lot of crazy stuff was going on, all right? And Florence Ziegfeld put on this review in New York at the New Amsterdam Theater where he had all these scantily clad girls, which were driving guys wild. And he even had on the roof of the theater what they called the Midnight Frolics, which were like really risque. Anyway, guys were going crazy. And all these girls, they would flock, and basically unknown girls overnight became sensations because once you were pulled into and identified as a Ziegfeld Follies girl, and by the way, the Ziegfeld Follies would only run for like 3 or 4 months every year, every season, from I think June to September. Okay? And they had the Ziegfeld Follies, they had a chorus, they had another one called the Ponies. But anyway, the whole book is about, it's incredible how many of these girls, some of them made it, but a lot of them, to the point that even then they were saying that becoming a Follies carried a curse with it. And that's what the book is about. That's what the book is about. About how it seems some of these girls had so many promising things. If you look at the odds, it is incredible how many of them I do give examples of others that made it, but like, yeah, you could almost say that there is. And by the way, that there is supposedly a ghost at the New Amsterdam Theater that was taken over by Disney that, repaired it because later on it kind of became like, the theater it fell into disrepair and became a movie house, and Disney like put it together, and it's real pretty. It's beautiful. You look on the interior, and supposedly one of the girls, the ghost, is a very early Follies girl called Olive Thomas. But then when you read this book, and you'll see what I mean if you read it, that it could have been a bunch of girls, not besides Olive. They were all very beautiful, of course, because Flo Ziegfeld, that was one of the things. He became like a connoisseur of women. Like, if the girl's into Ziegfeld Follies, she's a beautiful girl. All right? And that it could have been Olive, but it could have been a bunch of other girls that this was the moment when they were in that theater, was when they were the happiest, the most popular, where they were being showered with gifts by millionaires. So, yeah. So, again, look it up on Amazon. But till next time, guys, thank you for spending this time with me. Take care.